When they say, I love you, will you be my forever? What do you feel? Some people wait their entire lives to hear those words. But here's what others feel: memories of screaming matches and slamming doors, silent crying under the pillow, wishing for another family, the sharp sting of betrayal from the one they thought would be their home. They don't feel loved, they don't feel elated, and they don't feel safe. I've heard versions of this over and over in my sessions. This pain doesn't come from the proposal, it comes from everything that came before it. I'm Jordan Travers, a clinical psychotherapist, and today we're diving into the fear of marriage, what's really stopping you from committing, and how to begin healing that fear. This fear has a name: gamophobia, an intense fear of marriage or long-term commitment. And it doesn't come out of nowhere. Research shows it's often shaped by your early environment, your family, your upbringing, your attachment style. So let's start at the very beginning, where your idea of love was first written. The first, when divorce becomes your first definition of love. A 2024 study looked at 154 young adults, mostly in their 20s, people trying to make sense of love, commitment, and whether marriage still means anything. The researchers split them into two groups: those from intact families and those from divorced families. What they found was revealing. Participants from divorced families were less likely to view marriage positively and more likely to report fear, skepticism, and avoidance around long-term commitment. They expressed doubts like, if my parents couldn't make it work, how could I? Or, I'm scared I'll end up just like them. And this brings me to the second reason: coming from high conflict homes. The kind of homes that weren't broken apart, but broken on the inside. This is where it gets even harder. Even participants from intact families who grew up with parents who stayed together also expressed fear and aversion toward marriage. Why? Because their home was still filled with high conflict. Low warmth, emotional enmeshment, and cold silences and exhausted sighs. They said things like, what if we end up like them? Or, I don't want to live in that kind of house again. Another study examined 25 years of research on what shapes people's attitudes towards marriage. The conclusion? Parental environment is one of the strongest influences. Children whose parents had constant conflict, high emotional tension, or even post-divorce hostility were far more likely to develop negative views of marriage. Whether or not the parents stayed together, it wasn't the label of the divorce that shaped their fear. It was the emotional tone of the home. Many people I work with don't fear love itself. They fear what love looks like in their home. A crying mother at the kitchen table, a father who didn't come home for days, arguments that never ended, and silences that lasted longer than forgiveness. A home where disappointment was passed off as tradition. When your first experience of love is shaped by trauma, even the idea of commitment can feel like surrendering your emotional identity or inviting emotional suffocation. And here's the nuance: not every child of divorce fears marriage. Some actually grow hopeful, motivated to create something different, especially those who witnessed healthy remarriages or saw their parents grow post-divorce. So the real question isn't, did my parents divorce? It's, what did I learn about love from watching them? Because beliefs can be inherited, but they can also be rewritten. Which brings me to reason number 3, having an avoidant attachment style. People ask me all the time, what if I don't want kids? What if I can't handle in-laws? What if I hate being social after work? These are not selfish questions. These are survival instincts. And if those questions make you feel broken, it's because your boundaries were never taught to be respected. And that makes perfect sense, especially if your early caregivers were inconsistent, dismissive, or emotionally unavailable. You learned to survive by pulling away. You stopped expecting others to meet your needs, so you met them yourself. If you have an avoidant attachment style, intimacy may feel suffocating. Marriage might sound like losing your independence, having to rely on someone who might leave eventually, or believing that forever is a myth, a trigger word even. You might find yourself pulling back just as things get serious, or sabotaging a relationship without knowing why. You may value autonomy so deeply that commitment feels like losing yourself entirely. This creates what I call the autonomy trap. You want intimacy and connection, but fear becoming enmeshed. You crave a home, safety, to let go for once, but fear, vulnerability, and getting hurt. Take a pause because you need to hear this. Autonomy and intimacy aren't complete opposites, they go hand in hand as well. So, how do you move past this fear? When you grow up believing that love demands sacrifice, you start to fear losing the little freedom you've earned. Here's the thing, you don't have to commit or get married or to rewire your fear forever. All you have to do is uproot the beliefs that feed into it. So, pause this video and ask yourself these 3 questions. What did I learn about love and commitment growing up? What am I afraid marriage might take from me? And what would marriage look like if I got to redefine it on my terms? These questions aren't just a reflection, they're a roadmap. And if you tell yourself, I can barely tolerate people, how will I survive a relationship full of expectations? Or, I thought I'd be something by now. Instead, I feel like I'm running out of time. These aren't fears born out of selfishness, they're born out of grief for the life you imagined and the version of you who never got to live it. And yet, underneath that fear is something else, a quiet, stubborn hope. And hey, that version of you at 15, the one that thought they'd be super successful, happy, and loved by now, you haven't failed them, but you may need to grieve the life you thought they'd have so you can finally build the one that you deserve. Because from that grief, something more honest can grow, not from shame, but from clarity. I hope you listen to me. You're not afraid of love. You're afraid of what love used to mean. Fear of marriage isn't always a problem. Sometimes it's a signal. And if you're ready to receive that signal and work on that fear with professional help, you can book a session using the link below. I'm Jordan Travers. I'm the clinical director at Awake Therapy. And if you found this video helpful, hit like, subscribe, and share your story in the comments. I'll see you next time.